So Keith Lee had to end his Bay Area, California food tour prematurely. Let's talk about it. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Keith Lee ending the Bay Area, California wing of his Keith Lee and Family Food Tour early for a few reasons. And one of the main reasons is that the Bay Area is not safe and it's not really suitable for tourists. Now, before I get into that in the video that he put out, let's back up a little bit. You may not know who Keith Lee is. You may not know why he is important. Let me explain. Now, Keith Lee is an MMA fighter. If you go on YouTube and search Keith Lee MMA, you'll see him in a couple of fights. I'm not sure if he was good, bad, whatever, but he is an MMA fighter. But he gained a lot of popularity on TikTok for being a food reviewer. He would just go to certain places, eat the food, and give an honest take, whether good, bad, or ugly. Now, people generally love him. When he gives a glowing review of a restaurant, the restaurant may sometimes be struggling, may have a hard time keeping the doors open, but when he gives a good review, they go from nothing to something. He's very well known for giving $2,000 tips when he enjoys the food at a restaurant. He is really a godsend to many. On the flip side, if he does not like your restaurant, then things may not go well. He's not mean or vindictive or rude in his review, but if he says your food wasn't good or he didn't have good service, Atlanta, we'll talk about that in a minute, then it might not go very well for you. It could almost ruin your establishment. But for the most part, people love Keith Lee. They enjoy his reviews. When he says this is good, go there, people go there. They show up, they show out. Now, he was most recently in the Bay Area of California. He went to a few spots, recorded videos, but he didn't put out any of the videos. He put out one shorter version, I guess, a summary of his experience in the Bay Area to explain why he left and didn't put out any of the reviews. Now, this is pretty bad because he went to Atlanta and had an interesting experience. I'll talk about that later. He went to New York. He went to other places, had a good experience, bad experience, or whatever, but he put out the footage. He put out the videos. But it's pretty bad when he doesn't put out anything and has to explain why. Now, before I go any further, let's go ahead and get into the video. If you want to see this video in full, link as always will be in the description. If you're on IG, visit the link in the bio, go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Unfortunately, the Bay Area stop on the Keith Lee and Family Food Tour is officially over prematurely, and we're going to get straight into it. Let's talk about it. There are a few reasons why, as a family, we decided to end the food tour short. But before I get to that, I truly want to say from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single bit of love. The people of the Bay were absolutely amazing, and I'll never forget the hospitality and the love that y'all showed me. Reason number one, I truly don't believe the Bay is a place for tourists right now, and that's what I was, a tourist.
Now, you can see the condition of the road here. Now, later on in this particular video, he says he didn't show any of the tents because of privacy concerns. He doesn't want to show somebody in that kind of situation, but he was seeing a bunch of tents and homelessness and just abject poverty happening in this particular part of the country, and he didn't feel safe. And of course, you got your wife, kids, whatever. You're not going to feel safe in that kind of environment.
The people in the Bay are just focused on surviving. That's the business owners, the locals. The amount of tents and living structures and burnt up cars that we saw people living in was shocking, to say the least. Before we went, people was comparing it to Gotham City. Now, I might not agree, but I understand where it's coming from. But I can't harp on it enough that the people are amazing. It's just an environment. And as an outsider, I wish the city would step in. I don't know if they have. I don't know if they've been trying. But just from the outside looking in, it don't seem like it was much city interference.
The city's not going to get involved because the city and the state, quite frankly, they pretty much just let it happen. They know that in a place like San Francisco, Oakland, and other parts of California, there's a really big gap between the haves and the have-nots. You might be a Google tech bro, or you might smoke crack for a living. The middle class is largely non-existent in a lot of these places. Either you have it or you don't. And if you don't, you're just trying to scrape by. And he was referring to that, talking about the focus on survival. Yeah, because people, again, you have it or you don't. There's not much of a middle class anymore in most of the city areas of California. Let's keep on going.
Reason number 2, and this is in no particular order. We went to a lot of restaurants, popular restaurants, not popular restaurants, mom and pop shops. And this is the first city where I have over 6 videos that I don't feel comfortable with posting because nothing about my experience was constructive and nothing that I said was constructive. I've always been big on honesty. I've always been big on transparency, but I've never been big on completely tearing down anybody. And I feel like those 6 videos only doing that. And I've always said I'm absolutely blessed to do this, but it does take a lot of money. It does take a lot of resources to do. At the moment, everything comes out of pocket. So when we had that many restaurants that we couldn't do anything with, that was just another deciding factor. Number 3, and probably the most important, I had to go to the hospital because I had an allergic reaction to one of the meals I had. This restaurant in particular cooked a plethora of meats, including shellfish. My family specifically asked if they cooked it on the same grill. They said yes, but they would clean it. The second I ate it, I blew up like a balloon. I had to get some steroids and some allergy medicine, and it cleared right up. But it was a health concern nonetheless, and that was another reason why we decided to go home. I also think the Bay wasn't the target audience for what it is that we do. 90% of restaurants that the locals said had great food was already booming, and the people from the Bay are a loyal community. So
now, what he's talking about is what they do, what Keith Lee does. A part of his purpose is to go to a restaurant that has really good food that's under the radar. He gives a good review, and then the restaurant blows up. Now, I'm not saying he'll give the good review just because that's the purpose. He'll go to the restaurant, and if they have good food, then they'll get a good review, then they blow up. But over there, the restaurants that are good, everybody already knows, and they're already being patronized. The restaurants that are not doing so good, people already know and they avoid. There's no hidden gems, really. And that's part of his goal, is to discover the hidden gems.
So if your food is good, the line gonna be out the door already. And then again, we went to some of those restaurants and I wasn't a huge fan. And even if I did like all of the food at the busy spots, that's never been my MO to just go to busy spots. So those are the reasons why we decided to cut it short. But nonetheless, some amazing things did happen while we were there. Chef Green's was one of the restaurants that I went to, and he had a news segment the day after we left. God is amazing. Mama T's also joined that category with a news segment the day after we left. God is amazing. And one of the places that we went that I didn't get a chance to post was a highlight of our trip. The name of it was Luxurious Cuisines. Customer service was absolutely amazing. And the food wasn't too far off of that. We went in as a family and we left for a $2,000 tip. So the trip itself wasn't all in vain. And again, I appreciate every single person that I met. I want to stress, it is not normal for us to go to restaurants, not like it, and not post it. Any other time we ran into the situation, I've always had some kind of constructiveness to say. This was just different. And again, I'm always going to be transparent. I'm always going to be honest. Thank you again to everybody in the Bay Area. We'll be headed to the next spot soon. God bless you. Have an amazing day. Y'all be safe.
All right, so that's what's happening out there in Bay Area, California. A lot of poverty, a lot of grinding poverty, people just trying to make it, just trying to scrape by. Because, again, there's a really big gap between the haves and the have-nots out there. Either you got it or you don't. Either you can pay your bills or you can't. And that's just pretty much what it is, unfortunately, for that particular part of the country. Now, as I was saying, Keith Lee has gone all over the country doing reviews of restaurants. And also, he may critique the area. You see what he talked about with California, the grinding poverty, the tents, the hand-to-mouth living. But he spoke about other places. He gave a glowing review of New Orleans, Louisiana, and their food. Said it was 10 out of 10, the best in the country. A good review of Chicago foods as well. A good review of Houston, if I'm not mistaken. Their food, really good. Said he gained like 10, 15 pounds. I think it might have been in Houston or New Orleans where he gained that much weight. And again, this is an MMA fighter, an athlete. So, no, the food was pretty good. But one place, well, he had 2 spots he didn't really care for too much. New York City, I think he was recommended some places that weren't really that good. But Atlanta, Georgia, I'm going to talk about them right quick because I live close and I kind of understand. Then I wrap it on up, put the bow on top. Atlanta, Georgia has a scene where the food is secondary to the ambiance. You understand? So here's an example. There will be a restaurant that looks really good on Instagram. You could post pictures, do all that kind of stuff. Girls will go, because Atlanta is mostly women. They'll go to the restaurant, post pictures on the Instagram. The food might be okay. It might not even be good at all, but the food is secondary. People go there just because they say they went there. Oh, I went to X, Y, and Z spot. It was a vibe, but it's not really good food. It's not really good service. So then when Keith Lee, a food critic, comes to Atlanta and he's actually eating the food and he's not worried about the ambiance and how the waitresses look and how the grass on the wall and the hookah, when he's not worried about that and he's focusing on the food, he's like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? This is, I'm not even able to get my food. They're taking forever. You see, I'm going to close with this. People in certain parts of the country just kind of accept things that aren't really good. In Atlanta, people accept sometimes bad service. Not all the time. There are a lot of good restaurants in Atlanta, Georgia that have excellent food, amazing service, but some spots that are sometimes very popular don't have these things, and it can be confusing to an outsider. You go to California, people are really, really struggling out there, and they may not realize how badly they're struggling. An outsider comes in and says, hey, what's going on here? You guys living hand to mouth. And Keith Lee's from Detroit. So if you got a guy from Detroit talking about it's bad out here, it's pretty bad out there. But if you're living in that environment every day, you're not really going to be as aware of it as somebody on the outside is. Like if you're living in a house that smells bad, you may become nose blind to the scent, and you get a guest and they're like, hey, who's cutting onions and pig feet and hot moss in here? It stinks. That's kind of how it goes. But shout out to Keith Lee. He does really good work on his TikTok, helping restaurants, small mom and pops blow up. He really gives a lot of himself. He's honest, good person. And I think this was kind of a reflection on California to those who live there who don't understand how bad it is. We see it on the outside. Did you guys see it? But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your opinion about what Keith Lee said about the Bay Area of California? Is he on point, off point? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. What he said, I pretty much echo those sentiments. When I went to LA a few years back, I was like, this is ghetto. This is beyond ghetto. I mean, I was shocked. I was shocked to see the level of poverty, because you hear about California and Hollywood and all this and that and the third, you're thinking one thing in your mind, but when you get there, it's something else. It's like going to Paris and you see all the rats and it stinks. It's not quite the way you imagined it from all the fantasy and the media propaganda that's been placed in your mind since you've been a child. Whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.